The soul's quest. Why are we here? Since the dawn of humanity, one question has echoed through different languages, cultures, and eras. Why are we here? Maybe you've felt that silent calling before. That moment of stillness amid the chaos of daily life, when something inside you whispers, is there a deeper meaning to all of this? That uneasiness is not new. It crosses centuries, oceans, and civilizations. You can see it in the eyes of monks meditating in silence, in the whispered prayers of the elders, in the dreams of a child gazing at the stars for the first time. This search is the invisible thread that connects us. Because beneath the names, the clothes, the routines, and the titles, there is something within us that watches, that feels, that seeks. This thing that pulses with longing for meaning is what many call the soul. But what, after all, is the soul? Is it our essence? A fragment of the divine? Or is it just an illusion we've created to cope with the mystery of death? Philosophy, science, spirituality, all have tried, in their own way, to give form to this invisible presence. But perhaps the secret does not lie in a single answer, but in the many ways we ask the question. Maybe we're not here just to find the truth, but to live it. Between birth and death, there is an interval. And within that interval, we find encounters, pains, lessons, loves, and new beginnings. Many believe that this interval is not random, that the soul chose this exact moment, this family, this land, even these specific challenges. For what? For what purpose? That's where the idea of purpose comes in. Not as a career goal or worldly success, but as an inner journey, a path that unfolds gradually through subtle signs, synchronicities, unexpected encounters, as if the universe had scattered crumbs of light along the way. But did we really choose this life? In many traditions, the answer is yes. Before incarnation, the soul contemplates different paths, challenges, pains, and possibilities. And it chooses, not with the eyes of the ego, but with the wisdom of spirit, the life that can lead it to its greatest expansion. A choice not based on comfort, but on growth. And we are not alone in this search. All over the world, cultures speak of this mystery. They describe the soul as a divine spark, a traveler between worlds, a part of nature, a consciousness in transformation. Yes, the visions differ, but all emerge from the same spark, the deep sense that we are more than flesh and bone, that there is a story within us that began long before this body and may continue after it. This script is an invitation, a deep dive into the spiritual traditions of the world, not to choose which one is right, but to listen to what each has to say. Because by understanding how different cultures view the soul, reincarnation, and the purpose of life, we may find fragments that echo within us. Maybe you'll realize that what you've felt since childhood, that silent certainty that there is something greater, wasn't imagination. It was memory of the soul. So then, have you ever asked yourself why your soul chose to be here, now, living this exact life? There is an ancient concept, as old as creation myths, and as current as the latest spiritual awakening: perennial wisdom. This term, used by mystics, philosophers, and scholars, refers to a universal truth present in all great spiritual traditions, even if dressed in different forms. It's as if humanity, though separated by seas, deserts, mountains, and languages, has at different times tuned into the same sacred frequency. This frequency speaks of something that transcends time, space, and matter. It speaks of the soul, of its divine origin, of its journey through multiple lifetimes, and of the deep calling for purpose, for meaning, for reconnection. When we look closely, we find ideas like reincarnation, karma, spiritual mission, and liberation appearing in surprising harmony across traditions that are otherwise vastly different. In Hinduism, the soul, Atman, moves through successive cycles of birth and death, seeking final liberation, moksha. In Buddhism, although the notion of an eternal soul is questioned, the cycle of conditioned rebirth, samsara, is driven by unresolved actions and desires. In Jewish Kabbalah, the soul reincarnates to fulfill its mission of spiritual repair, tikkun. In Spiritism, popularized by Allan Kardec, reincarnation is seen as a just and compassionate mechanism for the soul's evolution. In African traditions like Ifa, it is believed the soul chooses its destiny before birth, guided by its ori, its spiritual head. Among indigenous peoples, the soul is seen as a living part of the earth, capable of returning in other forms within the clan or nature itself. Even in esoteric branches of Gnostic Christianity, we find the idea of multiple lives, with the soul fallen into matter, seeking to return to the Father through knowledge and love. These similarities are not coincidences. They reflect a shared perception that life is but one stage in a much longer journey, that the soul is not just a religious accessory, but a pulsing center of consciousness in constant transformation. Yes, there are differences. Some see the soul as immutable, others as a flowing process. Some believe we return as humans, others believe we may live in other realms of nature. But the heart of the message is the same. Life doesn't begin in the cradle, and it doesn't end in the grave. This realization can be both comforting and challenging, because if there is continuity, then there is responsibility. If we came here with a purpose, then there is something to be discovered, learned, lived. And maybe by understanding these diverse perspectives, we can build a richer and more complete mosaic of what our soul already knows, but our mind is still trying to remember. This script will follow that invisible thread. From tradition to tradition, from continent to continent, from wisdom to wisdom. And at each step, a new lens will be offered, not to dictate a single path, but to illuminate the many paths that lead to the same essence. Because, in the end, every tradition that speaks of the soul is speaking about us. About me. About you. About all those who, at some point, stopped and asked, "What am I doing here?" If we close our eyes and let our minds wander through the lands of ancient India, we might hear ancient mantras floating in the air, soft bells chiming in the distance, and the scent of sandalwood rising to lift the spirit. It is on this sacred ground that Hinduism, one of the oldest spiritual traditions in the world, has traced, with poetic depth, the journey of the soul. At the heart of Hinduism lies the concept of Atman, the individual soul. But unlike many Western views, where the soul is a separate entity, Atman is not seen as something isolated. It is a spark of the divine, an extension of Brahman itself, the whole, the absolute cosmic consciousness. Imagine the ocean, vast, infinite, mysterious. Now imagine a drop taken from that ocean. That drop contains the essence of the ocean, even if momentarily separated. Such is the Atman, a drop from the divine ocean, immersed in the experience of the material world, but destined to remember its origin. Why, then, is this divine spark trapped in the wheel of birth and death? The answer lies in samsara, the cycle of reincarnations. The soul, upon identifying with the body, the ego, and desire, forgets its true nature. And in this illusion, called Maya, it keeps being reborn, chasing satisfaction in the ephemeral, unaware that liberation lies within itself. This cycle continues until the soul awakens, until it realizes that it is not the character, but the silent witness, not the desire, but the presence. When this happens, it reaches moksha, liberation, the conscious return to the whole, the end of the cycle. But what fuels this cycle? What determines whether we are reborn into joy or suffering, abundance or scarcity? The name for this is karma, not as punishment or reward, but as vibrational consequence. Every thought, word, and action emits a frequency, and that frequency attracts compatible experiences. If we sow compassion, we harvest peace. If we sow greed, we harvest dissatisfaction. Karma is the soul's silent teacher, and each life is a lesson, sometimes gentle, sometimes harsh, but always necessary. Alongside karma, there is another equally profound principle, dharma. While karma is consequence, dharma is purpose. Each soul comes into the world with a role, a mission, a unique frequency to express. This dharma is not just a moral duty. It is a dance between the soul and the universe. When we follow our dharma, life flows with meaning. But when we ignore it, we feel emptiness, even when surrounded by achievements. To fulfill dharma is to live in spiritual alignment. And in doing so, karma dissolves more quickly, and the path to moksha becomes clearer. In Hinduism, the gods are not merely mythological figures. They are archetypal forces, representations of aspects of Brahman itself. Shiva, the destroyer of the ego. Vishnu, the preserver of order. Lakshmi, the abundance that blooms from gratitude. Sarasvati, the wisdom that guides the seeker. To relate to the gods is to relate to the hidden aspects of oneself. It is a way of remembering, through symbol, what the soul already knows. And little by little, that remembrance grows like a flame. The spark expands. The drop recognizes the ocean, and the soul returns to its origin. Imagine a lit flame. Watch how it dances. It has no fixed form, yet it's always there, moving, consuming, being reborn. Such is consciousness in Buddhism. Not something static like an eternal, individual soul, but a continuous flow of experiences, intentions, and consequences. A current in constant transformation. Unlike many traditions that see the soul as an immutable entity, Buddhism offers a radical and deeply liberating perspective. There is no fixed self. There is no permanent soul. What exists is a collection of interdependent phenomena, thoughts, sensations, emotions, arising and disappearing like bubbles on the surface of a lake. This flow is called the skandhas, the aggregates that form our experience. And it is our attachment to this experience, the desire to cling to pleasure and avoid pain, that generates suffering. We don't suffer because we have a flawed soul. We suffer because we mistake impermanence for identity. Just like in Hinduism, Buddhism also acknowledges samsara, the cycle of rebirths. But here, rebirth is not driven by an eternal soul. It's driven by a chain of causes and effects, known as pratyaya samutpada, or dependent origination. Everything arises conditioned by something before it. If there is desire, there is attachment. If there is attachment, there is suffering. If there is ignorance, there is illusion. And this web of causes stretches beyond a single lifetime. When consciousness dies, it seeks continuity, like a flame lighting another candle, and so it is reborn, in a new body, a new form, a new round of suffering. In Buddhism, karma is not divine punishment. It is movement born of intention. Every action done with intention, whether mental, verbal, or physical, plants a seed that will bear fruit in some future moment. Karma, therefore, is the architect of rebirth. But it is also the key to liberation. Because if our actions shape our experience, then we can choose to act with awareness, with wisdom, with compassion. And what is the destiny of awakened consciousness? Nirvana. Not a place, but a state. A state of no suffering, no attachment, no illusion. A state where the mind no longer clings to the waves of desire and fear. Where the cycle ends, not through destruction, but through realization. Nirvana is the silence after sound, the stillness after the storm, the flame that no longer needs to burn to exist. It is the Buddha's awakening beneath the Bodhi tree. Not the end of life, but the beginning of true freedom. But the path to nirvana is not walked by escaping the world. It is walked within it. Every breath is a temple. Every gesture can be a sacred act. Buddhism offers us two precious tools. Mindfulness, sati being fully here, now, without judgment, with an awakened heart. Compassion, kara recognizing in others the same pain, the same longing for peace, and responding with kindness and empathy. These qualities not only purify karma, they illuminate the path of consciousness. Because in the end, it's not just about escaping suffering, but about lighting up the world with our awakened presence. How many times have we chased something, believing we'd find happiness there, only to begin longing for something else the moment we attain it? Is the problem out there? Or is the real power found in learning how to inhabit the now, with acceptance and serenity? There is an ancient mystical tradition within Judaism called Kabbalah. It doesn't speak only of laws or sacred stories, but of the hidden mechanisms of the universe, of the soul, of the divine light that permeates all things, and of the mission every being carries upon incarnating. To the Kabbalists, life is not an accident. It is a sacred act of repair. And each soul is a traveler with an invisible map. The path of Tikkun. In Kabbalah, the human soul, called neshama, is seen as a spark of Ein Sof, the infinite. It is a part of the divine light that distanced itself from the source to enter the world of form and separation. But this descent is not a punishment. It is a calling. For in diving into the material world, the soul carries the mission to illuminate the darkness. Every action, every thought, every choice can bring more light or more shadow into the world. And in this balance, the neshama reveals its true strength. Tikkun Olam, a Hebrew expression meaning the repair of the world, is the spiritual heart of the journey. But this world to be repaired is not only external, it begins within the soul. Tikkun is the process through which the soul corrects the errors of past lives, faces specific challenges, and refines its consciousness. If in one life the soul was imprisoned by pride, it may return with lessons in humility. If it cultivated hatred, it may need to learn forgiveness. But Tikkun isn't only about fixing what's broken. It's also about revealing the divine potential hidden in life's hardest situations. Kabbalah also recognizes reincarnation, called Gilgul Hain-Shamit, the cycle of souls. Souls return not as punishment, but out of love, from a desire to evolve, from a need to complete what was left undone. A soul may return to the same family, the same community, even in bodies of different genders, all depending on what it needs to adjust, repair, refine. Each life, then, is like a page in a cosmic book, and the soul is the author, rewriting old chapters until the story finally reveals its full light. But Taiken is not a solitary journey. The soul does have an individual mission, but it can only be fulfilled in relation to others, to the community, to the world. According to Kabbalah, the universe was created with vessels that could not contain the intensity of divine light, and so they shattered, scattering sparks of light throughout existence. Now, every soul is tasked with gathering those sparks through acts of compassion, justice, humility, and truth. The purpose, therefore, is not just to be happy or to self-actualize. It is to elevate the world through your existence, to become a channel of light in a world that has, at times, forgotten its own divinity. What part of the world might your soul be helping to repair? Could it be that the challenges you face, that difficult relationship, that recurring obstacle, are actually invitations for your soul to fulfill its Taiken? And what if you could see those moments as opportunities to rescue light and restore balance to the world? In the 19th century, amid the rationality of Europe and the scientific fervor that sought explanations for everything, a movement emerged that dared to unite reason and spirituality, logic and faith. Its name? Spiritism. And its most well-known messenger? Allan Kardec. But Spiritism is not merely a doctrine. It is a moral philosophy that offers the soul a clear compass to understand the reason for pain, the meaning of life, and the path of evolution. According to Spiritism, the soul is eternal, conscious, and individualized. It survives death, passes through the veils of time, and returns, as many times as necessary, to learn, grow, and transform. Reincarnation here is not seen as punishment or prison. It is a sublime opportunity, a new chance to do better, to make amends, to love more deeply. Just like a student returns to school to review what wasn't learned, the soul returns to earth to continue its journey of refinement. So why do we face hardships, losses, and such deep pain? Because, according to Spiritism, every trial has a purpose. Before reincarnating, the soul chooses, with the help of spiritual guides, the key challenges it will face. These challenges are not random. They are tools for the soul's refinement. A child who demands patience, a loss that teaches detachment, a body with limitations that invites inner strength. Everything is a lesson. Everything is a call to love. But this journey is not blind. Every soul carries free will, the ability to choose, to shape its own destiny through the decisions it makes. At the same time, there is a divine justice that governs the universe, not punitive, but educational. There is no randomness. There is learning. There is no punishment. There is consequence. Who we are today is the result of what we did yesterday. And what we do now will shape who we become tomorrow. Life, then, is both a mirror and a book. Each soul has a unique mission: to teach, to learn, to care, to create, or simply to love in silence. But that mission is never isolated. The progress of the individual contributes to the progress of humanity, like a single cell that, by healing, strengthens the entire body. Thus, Spiritism invites us to collective spiritual responsibility, to help, to serve, to understand, to console. Evolution is not a solitary ladder. It is a bridge built with outstretched hands. And on this journey, we are not alone. Spiritist doctrine teaches that each of us has spirit friends, guides, or mentors who accompany us even before birth, offering guidance through intuition, dreams, and signs. They do not interfere directly, for free will is sacred, but they inspire us, protect us, and often speak in the silence of our conscience. In difficult moments, they whisper courage. In times of doubt, they plant hope. And deep within our hearts, we feel there is something greater guiding us and waiting for us. Before there were sacred books, stone temples, or organized religions, ancient African peoples were already speaking with the divine through nature, the ancestors, and the rhythms of the body. Among the roots of this ancestral wisdom, we find the Ifa system, a profound spiritual body preserved and passed down by the Yoruba people, which reveals a surprisingly complex and loving vision of the soul, destiny, and reincarnation. In the Yoruba tradition, each soul, before incarnating, passes through a spiritual portal known as Orin, the ancestral realm where gods, spirits, and unmanifested mysteries reside. There, the soul participates in a sacred ritual. It chooses its next life. This choice is made in the presence of spiritual witnesses, with full awareness of what lies ahead: challenges, gifts, lessons, encounters. There is no punishment, only commitment to evolution. The soul then signs a destiny agreement, the Ayanmo, and chooses what it wishes to accomplish in the world. But upon being born, it forgets this plan temporarily. The mission, then, is to remember. The key to this remembrance lies in the Ori, the spiritual head. Far beyond the physical mind, Ori is considered the true guardian of one's destiny. It is to the Ori that we pray, and it is with Ori that we make pacts. When Ori is aligned, life flows. When it is forgotten or out of balance, we feel confusion, repeated mistakes, or a sense of misdirection. To care for Ori is a daily spiritual act. It means listening to intuition, respecting cycles, honoring the body and ancestry. It is a kind of meditation in motion, lived with one's feet on the earth and spirit among the stars. The process of incarnation, according to the African worldview, also involves dialogue with Babalawos, priests of Ifa, and with the Orishas, divine forces that represent aspects of nature and human archetypes. Each soul is accompanied by a ruling Orisha, who lends it qualities, challenges, and protection. Aksum brings sweetness and sensitivity. Exango, justice and the fire of transformation. Ansa, the wind of new beginnings. Obalue, the deep healing of hidden wounds. These guides do not control the soul, but they help it fulfill its mission with greater wisdom. On earth, one can consult the oracle of Ifa, often through the divination of cowrie shells, to remember forgotten aspects of destiny, to understand life's trials, or to realign spiritually. Although the word karma does not exist in this context, the concept is present. Actions create consequences. Life is a spiritual mirror, but the focus is less on punishment and more on collective responsibility. For a soul never reincarnates alone. It arrives within a web of ancestors, community, and history. If someone heals a wound within their family, they are also healing those who came before and opening paths for those who will come after. It is the soul dancing with the ancestors and learning from them. At the center of everything is the sacred, but not a distant sacred, locked away in golden altars. It is a sacred that lives in the fire of the stove, in the beat of the drum, in the falling rain, in the healing leaf, in the song that sets one free. African spirituality does not separate body and spirit, work and prayer, earth and sky. Everything is one, and the soul learns, evolves, and reincarnates within this great living wheel of interdependence. The role of the community is fundamental. No one is saved alone. Each person is a mirror, a channel, a lesson for another. That is why, in Afro-Brazilian religions like Candomblé and Umbanda, direct heirs of this tradition, the rituals are collective, circular, based on song, dance, and ancestry. Have you ever felt that something ordinary, a meeting, a dream, a repeated pattern, carried a deeper meaning? And what if your life is woven with mysteries far older than you imagine? What if your destiny had already been chosen by you before you were born? In every forest, desert, mountain, or river, there is an ancient voice, a wisdom that does not come from books, but from the wind, the damp earth, the flight of birds. This wisdom is guarded by indigenous peoples, who see the soul not as something separate from the world, but as a living part of the fabric of nature. Here, the soul is not a solitary entity. It is the breath of the earth, the blood of the ancestors, the pulse of the cosmos in human form. For indigenous peoples across the world, from the Americas, Oceania, Asia, and beyond, existence is not divided between the spiritual and the material. Everything is spirit. Everything is relationship. The soul does not merely inhabit the body. It is part of the great organism of life. Just as the river flows into the sea and the sea returns to the clouds, the soul moves in cycles of birth, transformation, return. To die is not to disappear. It is to go back home. And to be born is to re-enter the dance of life. With a new face, a new role, a new mission. In the traditions of indigenous peoples, death is seen as a rite of passage, not an end. The spirit of the departed remains present, visiting dreams, guiding footsteps, protecting descendants. Sometimes, a soul returns, not just as a human being, but as an animal, a tree, or a wind that blows with a familiar whisper. Existence is a sacred circle. Nothing is lost. Everything transforms. This vision is reflected in ceremonies such as shamanic wakes, where singing and dancing help the spirit continue its journey, or in birthrights, where it is recognized that the newborn may be someone who has already walked among the living, someone who has returned with a new task. For many peoples, the soul reincarnates within the same lineage, returning as a grandchild, great-grandchild, or niece. Others believe the soul can return to the very land where it once lived, as a guardian of the forest, the mountain, the spring. This cycle is not governed by individual karma, but by harmony with the whole. The soul returns when something needs to be completed, protected, or rebalanced. That is why disrespecting the land for these peoples is seen as an offense against the ancestors themselves, because the land is not a backdrop. It is memory, it is body, it is the soul's home. In indigenous worldviews, all beings have spirit: the jaguar, the hummingbird, the vine, the fire, the rain. Each carries wisdom, and all take part in the same cosmic dance. The spirits of the forest are not metaphors. They are guides, messengers, companions. Some shamans say their visions and healings come from the invisible people, beings who live between worlds and know the soul's paths. The human soul, then, walks in community with the invisible. And true healing only happens when it is aligned with nature, with the drum of the earth, the whisper of the leaves, and the rhythm of the ancestral heart. For indigenous peoples, to live is more than to exist. It is to care for the sacred balance of life, To ensure the river keeps flowing, the forest remains alive, and the spirits can dwell in peace. The soul's spiritual mission is never separate from the collective or the land. It is a dance between physical survival and the preservation of the world's spirit. An elder may have the mission of telling stories. A child may be born to restore harmony in their village. Each soul, each being, is a note in a much greater symphony. And the music needs every one of us to be complete. Have you ever listened to the silence of the trees? Felt that the rain came with a message? What if your soul were deeply tied to the landscape you inhabit? What if your destiny were intertwined with the fate of the land beneath your feet? Long before dogmas and institutions, there was a form of Christianity that whispered profound truths. Truths preserved in apocryphal texts, mystical visions, and hidden communities. This form of Christianity did not speak only of faith, but of self-knowledge, reincarnation, and the soul as a cosmic traveler. This tradition is known as Gnosticism, from the Greek gnosis, meaning inner knowledge. The Gnostics saw the material world as a veil, and life as a journey back to the primordial light. It was not merely about believing, it was about remembering. Unlike traditional theology, many Gnostic texts, such as the Gospel of Thomas, Pistis Sophia, and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, suggest that the soul incarnates multiple times in search of lost wholeness. To the Gnostics, the soul's fall into the material world is an act of forgetting, and each lifetime is an effort to awaken, to rediscover what has always been within, the divine self. The body is not the enemy, but the temporary temple of an eternal spirit, and death, far from being the end, is merely a passage between veils, where the soul reflects on its path and prepares for the next cycle, unless it has already found its way back to the light. For Gnostics, the universe is like a shattered mirror. In the beginning, all was wholeness, unity, absolute love, the Father of light. But at some point, there was a fall, a separation. The soul forgot who it was and descended into matter, where it began to identify with the body, with desires, with fear. This fall is not a divine punishment. It is a loss of awareness. And the return begins when the soul turns inward and begins to hear the subtle voice of the Spirit, the inner Christ, as the Gnostics called it. To awaken is to remember who we are beyond form, and to return to the source, not through external merit, but through reconnection with inner truth. At the heart of Gnosis is the symbol of Christ, not merely as a historical man, but as a universal spiritual archetype. Christ is the one who remembers, who descends into matter out of compassion, who accepts suffering as part of the passage, and who overcomes death not by force, but by light. Each soul, in this view, carries the latent Christ within, and the sacrifice that sets it free is not external. It is the sacrifice of illusion. It is the surrender of ego, pride, and separation, so that unconditional love may bloom. This love, aga, is the fire that burns through the veils. It is the only passport needed to return to the primordial home. To the Gnostics, the world is a labyrinth, and the way out lies within. Salvation is not reached out of fear of hell, but through connection to essential truth. Know thyself was not just a philosophical motto. It was a spiritual calling. Each truth revealed within us about our shadows, our patterns, our desires and potentials is a key, and each key brings us closer to redemption through the light of knowledge. There is no need for intermediaries, No need for golden temples. The altar is in the awakened heart. The image that emerges from this vision is beautiful. The soul is a stellar traveler who once departed from Eden, the state of union with the divine, and who, life after life, crosses deserts, temptations, and forgetfulness, but always carries within it a spark of remembrance. It falls, stumbles, loves, suffers, and learns, and at some point begins to feel a gentle calling, an echo of eternity, and then it begins to return. Eternity, in this view, is not a place. It is a state of expanded consciousness. It is when the soul realizes it was never truly separate, that the Father was always there, in the silence, in the love, in the presence. What if heaven isn't a place above the clouds? What if heaven is inner clarity, unconditional love, and the full remembrance of who you are? Have you ever touched heaven? In a genuine embrace, in a tear of peace, in a moment of deep silence? We've traveled through different worlds, different languages, diverse symbols, unique stories. But there is something mysteriously common, something that transcends time, language, and geography. An invisible thread that links India, Tibet, Jerusalem, Africa, the Amazon, the mountains and deserts. This thread has many names, but in every tradition, it manifests as the soul's search for itself. Despite conceptual variations, there is a deep understanding that flows through all these visions. The soul, or consciousness or spirit, is eternal. It is not born with the body, nor does it die with it. It passes through experiences, but is not limited by them. And what lives here is just a spark of what it truly is. Whether called Atman, Neshama, Ori, divine spark, or stream of consciousness, the soul is seen as something that evolves, learns, expands. It is not a finished piece. It is a flame in constant ascent. Across all differences, 3 words appear in every tradition as fundamental guides. Love, the kind that heals, unites, and understands. Compassion, the empathy that turns us into bridges, not walls. Wisdom, not from books, but from an awakened heart. These qualities are not optional virtues. They are tools of spiritual ascension. The fragrance of a soul matured, ready to give and receive with grace. In the end, all these visions point in the same direction. The soul can be free from suffering, from repetition, from ignorance, whether it's called moksha, nirvana, complete taikon, ascension, return to the Father, or unification with the earth. The final destiny of the soul is always a state of oneness and expanded consciousness. It is not escape from the world. It is a transfigured way of seeing, not a denial of pain, but an understanding of its role. Not the end, but the blooming of everything that was already inside us. Looking across so many traditions, one truth becomes clear. There are many roads, but only one direction. That of awakened consciousness, of the liberated heart, of the soul that slowly remembers who it is, and that returns out of love to the place it never truly left, the divine within itself. In nearly every tradition, earthly life is not the end, nor the beginning, but a stage, a chapter in the soul's long journey. And this chapter is always an invitation to awaken. Here in this life, in this form, with this body, this family, these joys and these pains, the soul is in the school of the world. And like every good school, challenges are part of the curriculum. Sometimes, the lesson is to love. Other times, to forgive, or to let go, or to begin again. But the goal is never outward perfection. It is inner wisdom. Another common thread: nothing happens by chance. Actions carry consequences. And souls arrive with baggage, sometimes light, sometimes heavy, that shapes the present. We call this karma, or ayanmo, or taiken, or karmic lessons. But we also carry a purpose. Something not imposed, but chosen before birth or later when we hear the call. That purpose doesn't need to be grand in the world's eyes. It may be subtle, silent, intimate, but it is always essential for the soul's growth and the harmony of the whole. Perhaps we will never fully know why our soul chose this life. Why this body, this time, these parents, this country. Perhaps the answers are not in words, but in sensations, in intuitions, in that deep silence that sometimes visits us before sleep and says, without saying, "You are exactly where you are meant to be." Throughout this journey across different spiritual traditions, a single wisdom revealed itself in many forms. Life is not random, but chosen. We are not here by accident, but by purpose. The soul, in its infinite intelligence, accepted the challenge of incarnation, to experience, to learn, to evolve, and above all, to remember who it is, to remember its origin, to remember that every pain carries a lesson, that every encounter holds a mirror, that every apparent ending is simply another curve in the path. We live in a world that often distracts us, that pulls us away from ourselves. But when we go quiet, when we see with the eyes of the Spirit, everything takes shape, everything connects. You are not alone. You are not lost. You are in process. And no matter where you are on the path, the journey is sacred because you are sacred. What we call life is but one chapter in a vast cosmic story where the soul is the author, the character, and the reader all at once. Each incarnation is a chance to rewrite, to heal, to love more deeply, to become more whole. And when this life comes to an end, the soul will not disappear. It will return to itself. It will lovingly review the paths it walked. And perhaps, who knows, it will choose to return once more, out of love for the experience, out of love for the learning, out of love for humanity. The soul's journey is long, but it is beautiful, made of light and shadow, of falls and ascensions, of forgetting and remembering. And with every cycle, with every life, consciousness grows. Love refines itself. Wisdom blooms. Because the soul is not seeking perfection. It is seeking wholeness. It is seeking truth. It is seeking reconnection with the all. It remembers when it chose to be born. It remembers what it came to heal. It remembers old loves, eternal lessons, sacred paths. And now it is here, breathing through you, seeing through your eyes, waiting for just one thing, that you pause, breathe, and remember too.